together research efforts and partnerships to secure the future of 3 species of giraffes that occur in the region: Maasai, Nubian, and reticulated giraffe.
Hello. Also, thanks everyone for joining this presentation, and I really hope that you can hear me clearly now. I'll try to speak up so that my voice can come through. I know we are experiencing a bit of difficulties. So my talk is going to focus on just getting people to understand how we get to do giraffe conservation in a nutshell. There are many people involved in making things work, basically getting giraffe conservation projects off the ground and rolling. So I'll start with just giving people a quick explainer of how we got here. So many people love giraffes. You know, giraffes are very ubiquitous. There are many people who use giraffes to market their products. So we can, you know, there are people who love giraffes and they use it um, to market different products. We've all seen of we've all heard of Giraffe Manor, very famous hotel in Nairobi that uses giraffe as one of their prestigious marketing products. In Tanzania, just our border, just across the border here in Kenya, they have Twiga Brew, they have Twiga Cement. So Twiga is the Swahili word for giraffe, and they use many things around giraffes. But really, even though giraffes are used to market so many products, even though they are loved across the world, many people still do not know about what's going on many people do not know what's going on in the world of giraffe conservation. So the graph you're seeing there on the left, sorry to everyone, this is the only graph you'll see. I'll try to keep things a bit more interesting. So the graph that you are seeing on your left it's a graph that was taken from a presentation it's a graph that was taken from a study which looked at what do people know about populations in the wild. And you'll see that giraffes rank dead last. So they asked many people about charismatic species. We all know about polar bears, tigers, pandas. We know what's going on in the wild with them. We know the threats that they are facing. But more than 60% of the people that were interviewed did not know that giraffes are facing a really a precipitous decline. We are losing them at a high rate. So that showed us actually that scientists, people in government, even the public do not know what's going on about giraffes. So I'll go back to this graph that Steph showed you. So dating back to the 1700s, there used to be giraffes almost everywhere, but now we've lost almost 90% of the historical range. And that's a big area. So the other graph, the other picture that you're seeing on your left, this is where we have giraffes currently. So the areas you're seeing there in red, that's where we are having population declines. And unfortunately, most of the red is concentrated in East Africa, where I'm based. And so this image actually shows where we focus our projects and why we focus on those areas. And that's because, you know, we are seeing these population declines just from the people that are working with on the ground. And there are other areas where giraffes have gone locally extinct just in the past 30 years. So 30 years in giraffe language, that's 3 generations. So 3 generations, that means, from, you can think about it from your grandfather to your father to yourself, and that's not a lot of time. So in the past 30 years, we've lost giraffes in Mauritania, Senegal, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and Eritrea. And so that's quite disheartening. But all is not lost. You can see small dots of green, and that's where numbers are going up. And so that's a good sign. And so when people think of where giraffes are, we tend to think of pristine habitats. Numbers are doing well. We are seeing giraffes everywhere. And really, in some cases, we may get that. But really, what we see on the ground most of the time are fragmented habitats. And so, this is an image from Nairobi National Park. It's the only national park in the world that is located in the middle of a business district of a capital center. And so we are blessed to have, such a rich diversity of wildlife, even close to human settlements. So unfortunately, Nairobi National Park is really like a sort of a display of what's going on in the wild, where we have such a huge demand for land and wildlife are ultimately paying the price. So this photo that you're looking at is from Hell's Gate National Park. And really, these are some of the things that you get to see when you go out there and you want to see wildlife in pristine habitats. These habitats are getting more and more encroached and used for human development. So for those who don't know, Hell's Gate played a huge role in a small movie called Lion King. I don't know if many of you have watched Lion King, but the the movie itself was modeled after the national park. So here we have many gorges. We used to have a huge abundance of wildlife, and the scene where uh, Scar throws Mufasa off the cliff, that was off the gorges from Hell's Gate. And it's unfortunate that what's going on in Hell's Gate really does not get as much attention as it should. But it's an indication of how we are losing wildlife habitats to human development. And just linked to this, I'm sure most of you might have seen about 2 weeks ago, there was a giraffe, actually 3 giraffes that were killed by electrocution. And so that's a result of all these things happening. And Hell's Gate is just a few kilometers down the road. And this also happens as well. There's that stereotype that, in Africa we live with wildlife. So that does happen in sometimes where you have wildlife just roaming in human habitats. And so in short, really, the consequence of all of this is that we do have scenarios where habitats are being fragmented, and then giraffes are targeted also for poaching. And giraffes might be a unique species when it comes to poaching because they are poached for almost all of their parts. So depending on where you are, giraffes may be targeted for their skulls, they may be targeted for their bones, they may be targeted for their skin, they may be targeted just for the tail. And it's really, really disheartening to see an animal as majestic and charismatic as a giraffe that is just targeted for a small part of the animal. So enough with the bad news. I don't want to bum everyone out. What are we doing, and how does the conservation community come together to help conserve giraffes? Well, the first level that we're involved in to help giraffe conservation is we come in at the international level where we provide scientific data for policy and legislation. And this is really important because some policies provide high level of protection for giraffes, including their habitats. So some of you may already know this, but as GCF, we are part of the Giraffe and Okapi Specialist Group. I think almost all of the researchers affiliated with GCF are part of this specialist group where we provide scientific data to the IUCN. Just recently, giraffes were listed on the IUCN Red List of species threatened by extinction. So giraffe as a species are listed as vulnerable, but there are other species which have higher levels, which are more endangered. So for instance, the Nubian giraffe is listed as critically endangered. Reticulated and Maasai giraffe are listed as endangered. Recently provided data for giraffe to be included on CMS. CMS is the Convention of Migratory Species. What this does, it compels governments to list giraffes, to develop transboundary frameworks to help protect giraffes as they move across international boundaries. Giraffes are now listed on CITES, and we provide information for that. CITES, it regulates basically trades for endangered species to make sure that they are not endangered by trade. Then another thing which really takes up a lot of my time is working with governments to develop national strategies and action plans. So really, if you look at where giraffes are, we tend to think that all wildlife are just managed by governments. That's not the case. So depending on where you are, you're dealing with different management authorities. And so we have, as GCF, we have to find a way to work with these different stakeholders. So one way that we do this is we develop MOU and agreements with governments. So far, we have agreements with Uganda, we have agreements with Tanzania, we have agreements with Niger, and many more are under review. And this really helps get government buy-in. And so once you have government buy-in, you can then go to other levels where you get communities involved, you get other researchers involved, and really it becomes a huge umbrella that accommodates many people with different ideas on how giraffes can best be conserved, and this gets everybody involved. And really, one of the best case studies for this is Niger. They're one of the poorest countries in Africa, but they are on their second edition of developing their giraffe conservation strategy. And this is really exciting because it shows that there's government input and the government cares on how to best protect giraffes. So Kenya launched their strategy in November 2018, Tanzania in December of 2019, and then DRC and Uganda have theirs in draft form And these documents really help inform what are the priorities for conservation in these countries. So once we have these documents, part of my job is to go and meet everyone in the field, talk to them and see how we can implement these strategic plans. Because yes, it's good that we sit in a nice office, we come up with ideas, but then really the people who are going to implement some of these ideas are the people who are on the ground, and they can guide us how we can best implement these ideas, because they're the ones that live with Giraffe, whereas I'm based in a capital city, and sometimes I may not have a full appreciation of the full depth and range of and severity of these threats that giraffes are facing. A good example of this can be shown in Maasai giraffe. These are found mostly in southern Kenya and most of throughout Tanzania. So we developed this document, and we had good ideas of how we can best save giraffes. And when we met with people on the ground, one of the first threats that they highlighted that needs to be addressed immediately was the threat of fences. And this is something that really doesn't come to mind for many people. And so what's happening in many countries is that you have traditional pastoralists who really, they rely on their livestock, they rely on their land, set up a fence to demarcate the little portion of land that they've bought. And fences are really a big, big issue for giraffes because most of them don't see them. And if help is not there quickly, then you end up losing animals just to fences. And so they are, and what are the trends and how they are doing. And I believe Michael will go into details more about this because this is really a core part of our work. So in some areas, such as Northern Kenya, we work with the Twiga Walinzi, which was set up in partnership with San Diego Zoo Global. And these projects really empowers local people to guard giraffes and learn more about them and where they are. And linked to this, the Twiga Walinzi have done excellent work. They've recently set up also a human dimensions part of their work, where they go and talk to locals and try to raise awareness on giraffe conservation issues. And their work has directly impacted giraffe conservation. It has actually reduced the consumption of meat because they go and talk to people, they share facts about giraffe, they ask them where they see giraffes, they ask them if they use products, and just getting people involved in such initiatives and giving them ownership can have real tangible impacts. And we've seen that in Northern Kenya. The other part of the work that we do is also training and equipping rangers because they're the ones on the ground, and sometimes they may not have the right equipment to provide the data that we need for conservation. So we've worked with different partners. We set up an umbrella of, we set up an initiative which is known as Twiga Wetu. So Twiga Wetu in Swahili means our giraffe, and it's really a way of engaging communities to take ownership of giraffes. And so through these initiatives, we empower rangers, we train them, we equip them, and we get them to help in the conservation of these giraffes wherever they are. So we've set up projects under the Twiga Wetu umbrella in Niger, Tanzania, Northern Kenya, and more recently in Uganda. And that's particularly important because, as I mentioned, snaring is a big problem. And in some areas, we may not be able to get there quickly, but if you have rangers that are equipped and are able to respond, they may get in and do some work. And I believe Julian will cover more on that part of the work, where you have people coming in and providing real tangible help to animals. Because if they're not there quick enough, you might end up losing an animal just because of snare wounds or snare injuries. And these have really big impacts on giraffes. And we've seen this. This does tend to happen when there's no regulation of how people offtake animals. So a good case study will be Niger. So again, as I mentioned, Niger is a conservation success story for giraffes. And some of you may know, Niger is the only place where you can see the West African giraffe. There are no West African in zoos anywhere else in the world. They are just found in Niger, and they live next to communities. In fact, the area, one of the few areas where you could find giraffes until recently in Niger was an area called Giraffe Zone. This is near Niamey, the capital city of Niger. And really, the giraffes there were saved just because the community took interest. And they reached out, they sought help from different stakeholders. They started an NGO for ecotourism. It's called AVEN. And then they partnered with SCF, one of our biggest partners. So now SCF called the Sahara Conservation Fund, which approached us, and then we worked together to help empower the rangers over there to protect giraffes. And so since then, with the protection of the community, with the involvement of the community, the numbers have grown. just from 50 individuals in the late 90s, so 50, there were 50 giraffes left throughout the whole of West Africa, and that's a big area. So the numbers have now grown, and there are more than 650 giraffes currently found in the giraffe zone. And so, as you know, that's a big number, of course. And so the Niger government came in and said, let's not have all our eggs in one basket, and some of the giraffes were moved. And I'm sure some of you may have seen a video linked to this. If you go on our YouTube page, you can see the video actually of how the translocation was done. But it was a translocation that took over 2 days to get to the new area, which is called Gadabeji. It is in the northeastern, if I'm correct, well, in the eastern area of Niger. And it's a big push by the government to market, to reintroduce tourism in this area. And giraffes were introduced there for the first time, I think, in over 50 years, if my memory is correct. But giraffes were used as a flagship species to, reintroduce tourism and have people just get excited to seeing animals being introduced in areas where they used to be where they haven't been seen in a long time. And so this translocation was achieved through a collaboration of different partners, and it just shows the amount of work that can be done when you have the right partners working with you. And then the other thing that we do is develop education materials. And this is really important because, as you saw in the beginning, if you have almost 60% of the public not knowing what's going on with giraffes, then really all the work that is being done is for naught. And you need people just to have an understanding of where giraffes are, how they can be helped, and how people can participate. And all these education materials are on our website. You can also reach out to us if you want to use them. And we do this even in areas, we do this especially in areas where we are based. For example, we have posters for Kenya, Tanzania, Namibia. We try to branch out in different languages. We've recently completed a conservation guide for giraffes, which was done now in French, which is also another commonly used language in Africa. And then in some other areas where we have even partners who volunteer to make posters in local languages that people can, easily understand. And this then helps, people just get that appreciation of what the threats that giraffes are facing and how they can help and how they can get involved. And really linked to this, the overall goal is to also invest in the future. And so how we started this, there's a program in Namibia which is called KEEP. And really it's the Commerce Environmental Education Program, which takes primary school children from underprivileged areas, and they go out in the wild to see wildlife, to see giraffes, and to see how they can just best protect the environment. We all know that climate change is happening, and we need to get as many hands on deck for people to get involved and just understand how the food chain works, how the ecosystem works, and get a better understanding of how they can get in and help, just to see how everything is linked. And when we take kids out, they see wildlife. They have to reach more than 2,000 school children per year. And so that's a really exciting number. And we are really, really excited about this program. So we've expanded these programs to Kenya. We've recently done trips in Tsavo. We are now partnering with Ugalinzi again to expand the program in Northern Kenya. And that's really, really exciting. And so as Steph mentioned, even in COVID, we've been working. We've developed some educational material that kids can use from home, because we know that when you are home, you need something to do. And so this is Kuda, one of the guys. No, his name is Audi. Sorry, this is Audi, and he's one of the teachers who goes with the kids out in the field. And so because of social distancing and because the kids couldn't go out, we try to make videos for them to use. And some of these materials are online on our YouTube page, and you can go and just see the type of materials that are used and really how we can teach kids to get involved in conservation. And so just to wrap it up as well, as some of you may know, we have World Giraffe Day, which is our biggest event that really kickstarted what we call the giraffe conservation movement. We got people excited and involved in giraffe conservation. World Giraffe Day started in 2014. And since then, it has gotten people to Google giraffes just to learn more about what's going on. And it has become an international movement. So since 2014, the very first World Giraffe Day actually raised funds for GCF to hire the first full-time staff member. And that's really exciting. And that was through the support of everyone that participates in World Giraffe Day. And by everyone, we mean now it's a global movement. You have zoos participating. You have communities here in Kenya, throughout the world, who are just participating. Last year, there was an event here in Kenya, in Nairobi National Park, where the Minister for Wildlife chaired the event and, invited people to celebrate giraffes. So globally, there are people who do different things. There are people who do sales. There are people who do runs, galas, etc. And it has become an international movement where people just celebrate the awesomeness that is giraffe. And so we thank everyone for joining us. We know everybody loves giraffe, and we encourage you to keep on participating and celebrating giraffes and sharing, and also donating and just participating in the cause of saving giraffes. So we really appreciate your help, and thank you for taking the time to joining us.
All right, thank you, Arthur. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Fantastic presentation. Thanks for everything you do. For everybody who's here, in 1 minute, you should see the same pop-up to go to the next talk, which will be from Julian. Yeah, that'll just show up in a minute, and then you can click on over there, and we'll keep going, and then you'll see Arthur again on the panel. So if you have any questions for Arthur, put them in the comments, and we'll make note of those, and we'll bring them up in the panel.
Awesome. How was